They called her confused, forgetful, while they systematically emptied her home piece by piece. It's horrifying, isn't it? The quiet creep of manipulation, targeting those we should protect the most. What happens when trust, absolute trust, shatters, when the people meant to care for you become predators, when family becomes the enemy within? It's a violation that cuts deeper than just theft. It targets the soul. I'm Victoria, and the stories I share here, they dig deep, they expose the darkness that can hide behind familiar smiles, but also the incredible strength people find when pushed too far, when their very essence is threatened. We talk about resilience, about finding your voice. These stories are lessons in that, hard-won lessons. Today's story, it's one I haven't been able to shake. It stayed with me long after the recording stopped, shared with me by a client. Let's call her Agnes, a woman of quiet dignity, seemingly fragile, like pressed lavender saved in an old book, delicate, easily bruised, or so it appeared. But beneath that surface gentility, she had steel forged in grief, honed by betrayal, forged in ways no one suspected, especially not those closest to her. What was done to her by her own flesh and blood, her nephew Dennis and his calculating girlfriend Chloe, it wasn't just theft, it was soul theft. It was the methodical erasure of a life well lived piece by agonizing piece, an attempt to overwrite her history, her reality. They chipped away at her confidence, her memories, her very sense of self, painting her as someone she wasn't to justify the unthinkable. But Agnes, oh, Agnes didn't just crumble under the weight of their cruelty. She didn't just fade away like they planned. She fought back with a fury born of deep love for what was hers, and a cunning, a meticulous planning that left them utterly, devastatingly destroyed. You need to hear this, how righteous anger, channeled with precision, became the most potent weapon, how the skills she'd honed over a lifetime, skills they dismissed, became their undoing. Subscribe right now. You won't believe how she turned the tables, how she orchestrated their downfall with the precision of a chess master. You don't want to miss the details. Agnes asked me to tell it exactly as she lived it, in her own words, the pain, the confusion, the cold rage, and the ultimate calculated victory. So now, I'll let her speak. It started subtly, so subtly. You doubt your own mind, your own senses, your own memories. That's the insidious part, isn't it? The poison seeps in slowly, disguised as care, as concern. I've always loved my home. Every piece in it tells a story, holds an echo. My late husband, Arthur, and we didn't just furnish a house. We curated a life. We collected furniture, not just expensive things, though some were valuable, but pieces with history, character, soul, pieces that spoke to us. Our shared passion, our legacy, you could say, each object a bookmark in the chapters of our life together. The patina on the wood, the worn velvet, the scent of beeswax, it was home, it was us. My nephew Dennis, Arthur's sister's boy, he was always around, a fixture at family gatherings, pleasant enough, if perhaps a little lacking in direction sometimes. Arthur had a soft spot for him, tried to guide him, hoped he'd find his footing. After Arthur passed, Dennis became more attentive, or so I thought. His visits became more frequent, his offers of help more insistent. He'd pop by, bringing groceries I hadn't asked for, offer to help with chores, fix leaky taps, change light bulbs, mow the lawn, things that were, admittedly, becoming a bit more difficult for me. "Can't have you straining yourself, Aunt Agnes," he'd say with that wide, earnest smile. He brought his girlfriend, Chloe, around too, introduced her proudly. She was all smiles and helpful hands, admiring everything, perhaps a little too effusively. "Aunt Agnes, you shouldn't be climbing on chairs," Dennis would say, taking the duster from my hand. "Let me get that high shelf, you just relax." Chloe would rearrange cushions, constantly tidying dust figurines. "This place is like a museum, Agnes," she'd gush, her eyes scanning everything. "So much beautiful history, you have such exquisite taste." Looking back, her compliments feel like appraisals. At first, it felt comforting, less lonely. The house could feel overwhelmingly quiet after Arthur, their presence. Their youthful energy seemed to fill a void. They seemed genuinely concerned, caring, especially as I got older. 76 isn't ancient, heavens no, but things slow down, joints ache a little more. You appreciate the help, you lean on family. Or you think you can. Dennis took over managing a few of my bills, the online payments, direct debits, things I found fiddly and frustrating. Technology wasn't my strong suit. Never has been. He set it all up, brought me printed statements, explained everything patiently. Or so it seemed, giving me summaries, assuring me it was all in order. He had access to one smaller checking account, specifically for household expenses, groceries, utilities, repairs. I gave him the debit card, signed the forms. I trusted him. Implicitly, why wouldn't I? He was family, Arthur's nephew. Arthur had always been fond of him, despite his occasional lapses in judgment as a younger man, youthful indiscretions we'd thought long past. The first oddity, the first discordant note in the carefully orchestrated symphony of deceit, was the little Regency sewing table, the one by the window in the morning room, mother-of-pearl inlay, incredibly delicate legs. Arthur bought it for me on our 10th anniversary, found it tucked away in a dusty little shop in Brighton. He knew how much I'd adore it. I noticed one afternoon the light hit it wrong. The sheen wasn't right, it looked flat, duller. The intricate inlay seemed blurred, less vibrant, almost cartoonish. I ran my hand over it, tracing the familiar floral patterns. It felt different, smoother, too smooth, almost plastic-y. The warmth of the old wood was gone, replaced by something cool and artificial. "Dennis," I asked casually, trying to keep the suspicion out of my voice when he next visited, "did you polish the sewing table recently? It looks different." He glanced over, nonchalantly sipping his tea. "Oh, yeah, Aunt Agnes. Used that new miracle spray Chloe bought. Said it was amazing, meant to bring out the shine, protect the wood." He smiled, that easy, reassuring smile. "Looks good, right? Nice and clean." I frowned, leaning closer. "It feels different under my fingers." Chloe chimed in quickly, leaning over my shoulder. Her perfume was suddenly cloying, suffocating. "Oh, Agnes, it looks lovely, really sparkling. Maybe your eyes are just playing tricks. The light changes in here so much throughout the day, doesn't it, Dennis?" "Yeah," he agreed readily. "Probably just the light, auntie." Doubt crept in, a nasty little seed planted. Maybe they were right. My eyesight wasn't what it used to be, my sense of touch dulled by age perhaps. Perhaps I was imagining things, making mountains out of molehills. Just a different polish, aggressive, maybe, but well-intentioned. I chastised myself for being suspicious. Then, a few weeks later, it was the Queen Anne mirror in the hallway, the gilded frame, intricately carved with scrolls and leaves, a wedding gift from Arthur's parents. It had always hung there, reflecting decades of arrivals and departures. It always had this deep, almost burnished gold glow, mellowed by time. One day, coming in from the garden, it seemed brighter, brassier, garish. Almost the carving looked less defined, less crisp, shallower. The rich depth of the gilding replaced by something flat, like cheap gold paint. Again I questioned Dennis, trying to sound casual, inquisitive, not accusatory. Again the easy explanations, the gentle dismissal. "Clean the frame, Aunt Agnes," he said, patting my arm in that slightly condescending way he'd adopted. "Dust builds up like crazy in those carvings, makes it look dull, took ages but got it shining again." Chloe added, admiring the reflection, fluffing her hair. "Honestly, Agnes, it looks so much cleaner now, really brightens up this gloomy hall, doesn't it?" Gaslighting, I know the term now, learned it the hard way. Back then, I just felt confused, uncertain, adrift. Was I becoming that forgetful old lady? The stereotype they whisper about, the one who couldn't trust her own senses, her own memories of the things she lived with every single day. It escalated, slowly, insidiously, like a tide creeping in, stealing the beach inch by inch. My favourite reading chair, a deep-buttoned leather wingback, Arthur's chair, really settled by the fireplace, smelling faintly of his pipe tobacco and old books. It started to feel stiffer, the rich, supple leather seemed thinner, colder, less yielding, the buttons didn't seem quite as deeply, the tufting less pronounced. New cushions inside, Aunt Agnes, Dennis announced proudly one day, gesturing towards it. The old ones were getting a bit flat. Got them plumped up for you, more supportive for your back. Supportive or just wrong? The Georgian sideboard in the dining room, the rich swirling grain of the flame mahogany, something Arthur always pointed out, unique as a fingerprint, suddenly seemed too uniform, too perfect, like a photograph of itself, printed on cheaper wood, less character, less depth. Just a good waxing, Chloe chirped when I ran my hand over it, frowning, brought the colour right out, it was looking so faded. Each time the plausible deniability, each time the subtle reinforcement that I was the one misremembering, that my asterisk perception was flawed, that age was clouding my judgment, my memory, my senses. They'd exchange glances sometimes, quick, almost imperceptible, when I voiced a concern, a look that passed between them, a shared look that said, humour her or worse, see, it's happening. It wasn't just the furniture, small amounts of money seemed to vanish faster than usual from that household account Dennis managed. £50 here, 100 there, nothing huge on its own, but it added up. Groceries are just so expensive these days, Aunt Agnes, Dennis would sigh, showing me a crumpled receipt from the supermarket that looked plausible enough if perhaps a bit high. That plumber really charged an arm and a leg for that leaky pipe. He'd complain, producing another invoice, another expense I couldn't directly refute. I kept my own ledgers, meticulous habits die hard. I was an archivist at the local museum for 40 years, detail is my nature, record-keeping is ingrained. But even my carefully kept ledgers started to look confusing when matched against his explanations and the statements he provided. Were prices really rising that fast? Did I forget writing a check? Did I miscalculate? The creeping dread settled in my stomach, a cold knot of fear mixed with shame. Was I losing my mind? Was this the beginning of the end? Was I becoming a burden, a liability, just like they seemed to imply? They started suggesting things, gently at first, couched in concern. Maybe we should help you organize your finances more thoroughly, Aunt Agnes. Consolidate things, make it easier for you, Dennis suggested one evening, tapping his pen on a statement. Have you thought about maybe getting someone in, just for a few hours a week, professional help to assist around the house? Chloe offered, her voice soft and reasonable. Take some pressure off you. Dr. Evans mentioned you seemed a bit forgetful at your last checkup, Agnes, Chloe said one day, seemingly out of the blue, looking deeply concerned, laying a hand on my arm, just minor things, forgetting appointments, repeating questions. But maybe we should go with you next time, help keep track, make sure you get the best care. Dr. Evans, my doctor for 20 years, a kind, thorough man, had he really said that? Or were they twisting his words, misinterpreting his professional concern, planting seeds of doubt, not just in my mind but in others, setting the stage? I tried calling Dr. Evans' office, but couldn't get through immediately, and then doubt gnawed at me again. What if he had said something? Would calling seem paranoid, defensive, proving their point? I hesitated and the moment passed. I even mentioned my worry about the mirror to Martha, Dennis's mother, on the phone one afternoon, trying to sound casual. Dennis is so helpful, Martha. He even polished the hall mirror, though it looks a bit different now. Martha chuckled warmly. Oh, he's a good boy, Agnes, probably just used too much elbow grease. He worries about you, you know. Mentioned you seemed a bit overwhelmed lately, don't hesitate to lean on him. Her words, meant to be comforting, felt like another brick in the wall they were building around me, reinforcing their narrative unwittingly, perhaps, but effectively. The true horror, the moment the fog of confusion burned away, leaving only icy, terrible clarity, came unexpectedly on a Tuesday. I have, or rather had, a small, unassuming writing desk, late 18th century, fruitwood, nothing flashy or ornate, but incredibly rare, a piece Arthur tracked down after years of searching. Its value wasn't just sentimental, it was significant, financially too. Though few would guess it just by looking, it held pride of place in my small study. That Tuesday, Dennis and Chloe were visiting, supposedly fixing a dripping shower head upstairs, a task that seemed to be taking an inordinate amount of time. I was in the garden, deadheading roses, trying to clear my head. The earth between my fingers usually grounded me, but the unease lingered. I came back inside, needing a glass of water. The house was quiet, too quiet, no sound of running water, no banging pipes, just silence. I walked towards the kitchen, passing the open door of the study, where the desk lived. And I heard them, whispering voices, sharp, urgent, stripped bare of the usual solicitous tones, raw, greedy. "Just switch it now, quickly," Chloe hissed, her voice tight with urgency. "She'll be out there for ages pottering with those damn roses." "It's heavier than it looks," Dennis grunted, a scraping sound, wood against floorboards, effortful, nearly dropped it. "Did you get the replica out of the van? Is it covered?" Chloe demanded. Yeah, it's in the hall, covered with that old blanket. Just need to get this one out the back door, straight into the van." Dennis sounded breathless, stressed. My blood ran cold, turned to ice water in my veins. "Replica, switch it, van, back door." I froze, hidden by the angle of the doorway, heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird, my breath caught in my throat. "The dealer said this fruitwood thing is the real prize," Dennis continued, his voice low, conspiratorial, vibrating with greed. "The rest, nice little earners padding the account. But this is the one that sets us up, pays off the debts, gets us that deposit." "Just hurry," Chloe urged impatiently. Imagine her face if she caught us. A cruel little laugh followed, sharp and brittle. Though, honestly, she probably wouldn't even notice, bless her cotton socks, losing her marbles faster every day. Sometimes I almost feel sorry for her. "Almost," Dennis echoed, a nasty chuckle devoid of any warmth. "Yeah, Dr. Evans is already halfway convinced she needs support." He actually used the phrase cognitive assessment. Last time I spoke to him after her appointment. Another few confused episodes, like forgetting where she parked or leaving the stove on. A bit more help managing her affairs. Power of attorney is next. Then we can handle everything properly. Power of attorney, cognitive assessment, forgetting where she parked, leaving the stove on. Lies, all vicious lies fed to my doctor, to everyone. They weren't just stealing my furniture piece by painstaking piece, replacing my history with cheap fakes. They weren't just siphoning my money, bleeding my household account dry. They were systematically dismantling my life, my credibility, my autonomy, painting me as incompetent, senile, confused, to gain control, to take everything, to erase Agnes, and leave only a caricature, a helpless old woman they could manage and fleece. The betrayal, it was absolute, calculated, cold-blooded, cruel, coming from Arthur's nephew, the boy I'd bounced on my knee, given graduation gifts to, welcomed into my home, my life, after his uncle died, trusted. In that moment, listening to their poison, something inside me shifted, snapped, the confusion, the fear, the hurt, the self-doubt. It didn't vanish, but it transmuted into something else, something cold, hard, and utterly, incandescently furious. The frail old lady they thought they were manipulating, the slightly forgetful Aunt Agnes they were cultivating. She died right there in the hallway, listening to their venomous whispers, their casual cruelty. And someone else, someone I hadn't known existed within me, took her place. Someone meticulous, someone patient, someone who understood records, evidence, provenance, and the long game, someone fueled by a righteous rage that burned hotter than any furnace, clearing away the fog of uncertainty. They thought they were dealing with a confused old woman ripe for the picking. They had no idea. They had just awakened a sleeping dragon, cloaked in lavender and lace, and years of archival experience. I slipped back outside, silently, my footsteps making no sound on the path. My hands weren't shaking anymore, my mind was sharp, terrifyingly sharp, laser-focused. The intervention they planned for me, the pleas for help, the feigned concern, it was all a lie, a monstrous performance, designed to strip me bare, legally, financially, personally. Fine, let them think they were succeeding. Let them think the dear confused Aunt Agnes was oblivious, for now, their arrogance would be their downfall. My archivist brain kicked into high gear, decades of training, instinct taking over, documentation, proof, evidence. That was everything, cross-referencing, verification, authentication, that was my world. Over the next few weeks, I became the picture of gentle confusion they were painting. I leaned into the role they'd cast for me. I forgot names occasionally, misplaced my keys more often, asked repetitive questions. Let them help me, guide me, patronize me, correct me gently, exchange those knowing glances over my head. "Oh, Aunt Agnes, you asked that already, remember," Chloe would say sweetly. "Don't worry, Auntie, I'll handle that call for you," Dennis would offer, taking the phone. Inside, I was a whirlwind of focused activity, seething, but controlled. I bought tiny spy cameras, discreetly online, the kind hidden in clocks, phone chargers, picture frames, delivered to a neighbor's address, smuggled into my house, positioned them carefully, strategically, capturing key angles, the hallway mirror, the dining room sideboard, the space where the fruitwood desk used to be, the living room where they often sat, even one pointed towards the back door they'd used. I reactivated an old laptop they didn't know about, kept in a box in the attic with Arthur's old papers, set it up in my bedroom, began documenting everything, dates, times, specific pieces of furniture I suspected were swapped, cross-referencing my memory with old photographs from albums, insurance inventories meticulously filed away, Arthur's detailed notes on provenance and condition. For every significant piece we owned, he was as meticulous as I was. A shared trait that now felt like a lifeline. The differences, once I looked critically, objectively, with the eyes of a trained archivist, were glaring, appalling. The grain patterns on the sideboard, completely wrong, the hardware on a chest of drawers, cheap brass instead of aged bronze, the subtle imperfections of age, the tiny scratches and dents that told a story, all missing from the sterile replacements, replaced by shoddy craftsmanship masked with thick varnish. I started taking my own date-stamped photos, secretly, using my old mobile phone when they weren't around, close-ups of the fakes, comparing them side by side on the laptop screen with pictures of the originals, building a visual dossier, evidence item number 1, 2, 3, cataloguing their crimes. The finances, oh, the finances. I went to the bank, spoke to the manager I'd known for years, discreetly requesting detailed statements for the household account Dennis managed, going back months further back than the summaries Dennis had provided. Then the painstaking work, late into the night, fueled by coffee and cold fury, cross-referencing every withdrawal, every check, every direct debit with my own ledger. And online searches for typical costs of plumbers, electricians, groceries in my area. The discrepancies were staggering, obscene checks with slightly shaky, but passable, forgeries of my signature made out to cash, often just before Dennis and Chloe went on a weekend trip I saw photos of online, or made out to companies I'd never heard of, shell companies. I suspected online purchases, traced back through obscure payment processors to Chloe's personal accounts or burner cards, for cheap furniture, matching the very replicas now polluting my home. Plumber invoices inflated by hundreds of pounds, grocery bills padded with phantom items, a systematic siphoning, thousands upon thousands of pounds bled away, my trust exploited transaction by transaction. I found the online receipts, eventually buried in archived emails on the shared tablet Dennis had set up for me, receipts for the fake Regency sewing table, the brassy mirror, the stiff leather wingback, delivered to their *rented apartment address, usually a week or two before magically appearing in my home after Dennis's, helpful, visits involving repairs or cleaning in that specific area, the logistics of their deceit laid bare. And the fruitwood desk, the crown jewel they thought they'd stolen, the key to their future. I searched online antique dealer sites, auction platforms, specialist forums, using keywords from Arthur's notes. There it was, listed on a relatively obscure consignment site, described using phrases lifted directly, arrogantly, from Arthur's old valuation papers. Papers Dennis must have accessed or photographed when helping me organize my study months ago. The photography matched the replica perfectly. The asking price, astronomical, a price the real desk might command, but utterly fraudulent for the piece they were actually selling. Proof, cold, hard, undeniable proof, a mountain of it, digital trails, paper trails, photographic evidence, even snippets of damning audio from the hidden cameras, capturing snippets of their conversations when they thought I was out of earshot, confirming the replacements, complaining about my fussiness, congratulating themselves on how well their plan was working. But simply going to the police, presenting my file felt insufficient, inadequate. They'd face charges, yes, embezzlement, fraud, theft, maybe some jail time, maybe just probation, restitution ordered, perhaps, but likely paid back slowly, painfully. But the humiliation, the public shame they deserved for such intimate betrayal, the utter social destruction they had tried to inflict on me, that required a different approach, a more personal touch. My rage hadn't cooled, not one bit. It had simply settled, hardened into resolve, tempered like steel. They hadn't just stolen things, they'd tried to steal my identity, my sanity, my legacy. My voice. They deserved more than just legal consequences dealt out in a sterile courtroom. They deserved exposure, total, devastating public exposure, within the circle they cared about most, family. I needed a plan, something theatrical, something dramatic, something that would hit them where they lived in their carefully constructed world of appearances and social standing, among the very people they were trying to impress and manipulate. An intervention, yes, that word they'd whispered about for me, an intervention, but not the kind they envisioned. Oh no, this would be my asterisk intervention, on my asterisk terms, in my asterisk house, surrounded by the evidence of their deceit, the cheap imitations of my life. I started making calls, carefully, deliberately, selecting the guest list, key family members, Dennis's parents, Martha and George, whose approval he desperately craved, his sister, Karen, and her husband, Mark, who always seemed a bit skeptical of Dennis's schemes, a couple of influential family friends, pillars of their social circle, people whose opinions Dennis and Chloe cared about deeply, people they constantly tried to impress with borrowed status. I didn't reveal the true purpose, just a family gathering, a special announcement. I needed to make something vague, intriguing, important enough to ensure attendance. Beatrice is hosting a little get-together, I heard was the rumour mill churning, relayed by a cousin, sounded quite serious. Something about updating her will, perhaps. Let them speculate, let them think it was about money, inheritance in a way. It was, just not their way, let their greed draw them in. And then, the final piece of my plan, the masterstroke, born of pure, cold fury, meticulous planning, and an archivist's deep love for the genuine article, combined with a sudden flash of inspiration born from their own carelessness. You see, when I overheard them discussing the fruitwood desk that day in the hallway, their urgency, their focus on that specific piece, I realized something. They were getting sloppy, overconfident. They assumed I was completely oblivious, lost in my supposed fog. But I was not anymore. Before they could enact their plan to switch the real desk during their next helpful visit, I had already acted, quietly, efficiently, the day before their planned visit, the very day after I overheard their conspiracy. I'd had the real asterisk fruitwood desk professionally moved by trusted antique handlers into secure, climate-controlled storage across town, and replaced it with an exceptionally high-quality replica I'd commissioned weeks earlier. As soon as my suspicions about the other asterisk furniture began to solidify, just in case, a contingency, a trap, waiting to be sprung, finding the right craftsman quickly, paying a rush fee, arranging the logistics discreetly. It had been a frantic few weeks, but necessary. So the desk Dennis and Chloe had struggled to move out that Tuesday, the one they'd grunted and sweated over, the one they'd carefully loaded into their van, the one they'd listed online with such arrogance. It was my replica, planted there by me, not the priceless original. They had stolen a fake, believing it was their golden ticket, their key to a new life, and I had the receipts for the replica's creation, the emails with the craftsman, and the storage company's detailed contract and confirmation for the real desk's safekeeping, dated before their theft. The trap was set, the players were invited, the stage was my desecrated home, filled with their cheap props. It was time for the performance, my performance. You know, planning something like this, orchestrating such a confrontation, it takes a toll, sleepless nights, replaying conversations, doubting myself momentarily. But the anger, the sheer, righteous anger, its rocket fuel, it kept me going, sharp, focused, every detail meticulously arranged, every piece of evidence catalogued and ready, every contingency considered. Victoria here, just stepping in for a moment, can you feel the tension building? Agnes, this quiet, dignified woman, methodically planning this elaborate act of, well, what would you call it? Justice, revenge, self-preservation, maybe all three. It's intense, right? The level of detail, the foresight, fueled by that cold fury she described, stick with us, because the confrontation, the intervention she orchestrates, it's something else entirely. If you're finding this compelling, finding yourself rooting for Agnes, imagine how much power is in reclaiming your own story, your own truth. Hit that subscribe button, share this if you know someone who needs to hear it. You never know whose life it might touch. Okay, back to Agnes, the guests are arriving. The day arrived, a crisp Saturday afternoon. The air held a hint of autumn chill, my house, cleaned and polished within an inch of its life, but filled with their cheap imitations, a stage set for maximum impact, the fakes gleaming under the lights, almost mocking me, but soon they would serve my purpose. I arranged the seating carefully, a large semicircle in the living room, chairs brought in from the dining room, facing me, and facing a discreetly placed projector screen, currently blankly pulled down in front of the fireplace, my old laptop connected, hidden behind a large potted fern, remote control clutched in my hand. Dennis and Chloe arrived early, predictably dripping fake solicitude like cheap perfume, eager to be seen as the dutiful niece and nephew-in-law. Aunt Agnes, you look wonderful, Chloe gushed, fussing with my shawl. Her touch felt like ice, sending a shiver down my spine despite the warm room. I resisted the urge to pull away. Everything all right, Auntie? Dennis asked, that practiced concerned frown etched on his face, his eyes darting around the room, perhaps assessing the guests, perhaps wondering about the mysterious announcement. You seemed a bit flustered on the phone when you invited us. Just excited to see everyone, dear, I smiled sweetly. The calm before the storm let them underestimate me one last time. The guests trickled in, Dennis's parents, Martha and George looking slightly bewildered, but trying to appear supportive, his sister, Karen, and her husband, Mark. Their expressions were harder to read, perhaps a touch wary, a couple of cousins, old family friends, the Hamiltons, pillars of the local community whose opinions Dennis and Chloe valued highly. The air was thick with unspoken questions, polite chatter barely masking the underlying tension. Everyone knew something significant was about to happen. Dennis and Chloe played the perfect hosts, taking coats, offering drinks, making small talk, basking in the perceived importance of the gathering. They moved around the room with an air of possessive familiarity, as if this were already their domain, probably imagining a frail Aunt Agnes, about to announce Dennis as her primary beneficiary or executor, perhaps even suggesting she move to a more suitable facility. How wrong they were, their arrogance was almost blinding. Once everyone was settled, drinks in hand, expectant eyes turned towards me. I stood up, slowly, deliberately. Using the antique cane Arthur had sometimes used, all eyes turned to me. The chatter died down instantly. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice clear, steady, stronger than it had been in months, no hint of the confusion they'd worked so hard to cultivate. I met Dennis's gaze, then Chloe, held it for a beat longer than comfortable. "I know you're wondering why I gathered you here today." I paused, letting the silence stretch, fill the room. Dennis shifted in his seat, adjusting his tie nervously. Chloe offered a strained, tight-lipped smile. "For some time now," I continued, keeping my tone measured, factual, "I've been experiencing changes in my home, in my finances, in my sense of well-being." I let my gaze drift around the room, meeting the eyes of the guests. I saw Dennis and Chloe exchange a quick, almost imperceptible glance, a flicker of pity, or perhaps victory. "Here it comes," their eyes seemed to say, the rambling confession, the confirmation of her decline. "I've been told subtly, and not so subtly that I might be confused, forgetful." I looked directly at Dennis, then Chloe, their smiles tightened, became brittle, "that perhaps I need more help managing things, that my memory isn't what it once was." Martha, Dennis's mother, leaned forward, her face etched with genuine concern, fueled, no doubt, by her son's carefully planted worries. "Oh, Agnes dear, if you need anything, anything at all, you know Dennis and Chloe would move heaven and earth for you. We all would." "Thank you, Martha," I said, my voice still calm, deadly calm. "Your concern is noted, but I've discovered the source of my confusion, and it's not what you might think. It's not age, it's not forgetfulness." I picked up the small black remote control from the table beside me, aimed it at the screen, the projector words softly to life, casting a bright rectangle on the screen. The first image appeared, a clear, well-lit photo of the Regency sewing table, the asterisk real one, taken years ago for an insurance valuation, rich mother-of-pearl inlay shimmering, delicate patina of age visible on the legs, followed immediately by a date-stamped photo, taken just 2 weeks ago, of the flat, lifeless replica currently sitting by the window mere feet away from them. The difference was stark, undeniable. A collective gasp rippled through the room, small murmurs of confusion. "This table," I said, my voice steady, pointing towards the screen, then gesturing to the actual fake table in the room, "was a 10th anniversary gift from Arthur. Dennis, Chloe, you admired it often, remember telling me you polished it with a new spray, bringing out the shine." Dennis went pale, a sickly, greyish tinge under his tan. Chloe's eyes widened, darting around the room like a trapped animal, searching for an escape route, finding none. Click, the remote felt solid in my hand. The next image, the original Queen Anne mirror, intricate carving, sharp and deep, the gold mellow and rich. Click, the brassy, shallowly carved fake hanging in my hallway right now, visible from the living room doorway. "You cleaned this too, didn't you, Dennis?" My voice was soft, almost conversational, but it carried to every corner of the silent room, really brightened it up. Click, the leather wingback, Arthur's chair deep, inviting buttoning, the supple, worn texture of the real leather visible in the old photo. Click, the stiff, shallowly buttoned replacement currently occupied by one of the cousins, who now looked distinctly uncomfortable. "New cushions inside, you said, plumped them up, made it more supportive." Click, 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 image after image, a relentless parade of betrayal. The Georgian sideboard, compared to its bland, characterless counterpart in the dining room, a pair of valuable Meissen porcelain lamps, replaced with cheap ceramic versions with ill-fitting shades, a small, cherished collection of antique silver boxes from my dressing table, gone, replaced with flimsy plated tin replicas, each comparison, stark, damning, highlighting the shoddiness of the fakes against the quality of the originals. The room was silent now, utterly, profoundly silent, except for the soft clicking of the remote in my hand, and perhaps the frantic pounding of Dennis's and Chloe's hearts. The air crackled with disbelief, turning slowly to dawning horror on the faces of the guests. My home, my history, my memories, Arthur's legacy, systematically replaced, piece by piece, with cheap fakes. I let the words hang in the air, heavy, accusatory, while I was being told I was confused. But Beatrice, Agnes, George, Dennis's father, stammered, his face slack with shock, looking utterly bewildered, glancing from the screen to his son. Who? Why? I turned the projector off. The screen went blank, plunging the room back into a tense, shadowy silence. I turned my body fully towards Dennis, then Chloe. Their faces were masks of horror, trapped, exposed, the architects of their own destruction. Why don't you tell them, Dennis? I asked, my voice dropping, dangerously low, laced with the ice of my fury. Why don't you tell your parents, your sister, our friends about your helpful visits? About the deliveries of cheap furniture to your apartment before these objects appeared in my house? Chloe started to speak, finding her voice first, sharp, defensive. This is ridiculous, preposterous. Agnes, you're clearly not well, you're confused, I finished for her. A cold, humorless smile touched my lips. Oh, I assure you, Chloe, I am not confused, not anymore, my mind has never been clearer. I held up a thick sheaf of papers, bank statements, highlighted with damning clarity, check copies, with those shaky, forged signatures enlarged, online receipts for the fake furniture printed out, clear as day, addresses circled in red. Perhaps you'd like to explain the household account, Dennis. The thousands upon thousands of pounds siphoned off over the last year, the cheques forged in my name, made out to cash just before your little holidays, the online purchases for these very specific replicas delivered directly to your address. I fanned the papers slightly, the evidence rustling ominously in the silence. Martha gasped audibly, covering her mouth with a trembling hand. Tears welled in her eyes. George looked like he'd been physically punched, his face paling further. Karen stared at her brother, her expression shifting from confusion to utter, undisguised aghast contempt. Mark put a protective arm around her. Dennis opened his mouth, closed it again, no words came. He looked utterly broken, cornered, trapped by the sheer weight of the meticulously gathered evidence. He just shook his head mutely, staring at the floor. Chloe, however, rallied, predictably, desperation fueling a shrewish, spitting anger, replacing the initial panic. She's making this all up, it's fantasy, she's paranoid, she is confused. We were trying to help her, protecting her assets, managing things because she could. Were you trying to help me? I interrupted, my voice cutting through her shrill protests like shards of glass, cold and sharp. When you went to Dr. Evans behind my back, exaggerating my occasional normal memory lapse, inventing incidents, planting seeds, suggesting I needed oversight, professional assessment, laying the groundwork, the narrative, to get power of attorney to gain full control. That hit home, hard, the final piece, the medical manipulation, the attempt to strip me of my autonomy, my legal rights. That was the gasp that echoed loudest in the room, the ultimate betrayal, exploiting age, vulnerability, trust. And were you trying to help me? I continued relentlessly, the fury now undisguised, burning cold and bright in my eyes, fixed on their crumbling facades. When you crept into my study that Tuesday, like thieves in the day, while I was supposedly oblivious in the garden, and stole my rarest, most valuable piece, the fruitwood desk, Arthur's pride and joy. Dennis flinched visibly, as if struck, his head snapped up, eyes wide with a new kind of fear. The desk you currently have listed for sale on Antiques Consign Online, using details copied directly from Arthur's private valuation papers. I picked up the remote again, projected one final, devastating image onto the screen, a screenshot of the online listing, price, detailed description lifted from Arthur's notes. Photos of the replica they stole, undeniable, their greed immortalized online. We, Dennis stammered, voice hoarse, finally finding words, grasping for any possible lifeline, any justification. We were safeguarding it. For you, we thought it wasn't safe here with you being unwell. We were going to sell it and put the money aside for your care, honestly. A pathetic lie, transparently desperate, utterly unbelievable in the face of everything else. Safeguarding it, I laughed, a short, harsh sound, devoid of any humour, brittle with contempt. By sneaking it out the back door, listing it for sale under your own contact details. Is that what you call safeguarding, Dennis? I leaned forward slightly, gripping my cane, my voice dropping to almost a whisper, but carrying an intensity that made every person in the room hold their breath. Here's the delicious irony, Dennis, Chloe. I savoured the moment, the culmination of weeks of planning, meticulous execution, fueled by betrayal and righteous anger, the desk you stole, the one you risked everything for, the one you thought was your golden ticket. Pause, absolute, pin-drop silence. You could hear the blood draining from their faces, see the confusion warring with dawning comprehension. It's a fake. The silence stretched, heavy, suffocating, their mouths opened slightly. No sound emerged, just utter blank shock. A very, very good fake, I continued, relishing their stunned, horrified expressions, indistinguishable to the untrained eye, perhaps, but a replica nonetheless, one I commissioned myself weeks ago. As soon as I suspected the depth of your disgusting scheme, the real fruitwood desk, Arthur's desk, has been in secure, climate-controlled storage, professionally documented for over a month. I held up another document, the storage agreement, dated clearly signed by me and the storage facility manager, irrefutable, time-stamped before their theft. You went to all that trouble, all that risk, took photos, listed it online, implicitly confessed your intentions to defraud both me and any potential buyer, all for a worthless replica, my replica. The looks on their faces, utter devastation, complete humiliation, annihilation. It was profoundly, grimly satisfying, the architects of their own elaborate downfall, caught in a trap of their own making, amplified by my foresight. I let the silence sit, let them stew in the wreckage of their own greed and cruelty. Let the family, the friends, absorb the full, sickening horror of what Dennis and Chloe had done, the depth of their calculation, their callousness. Martha was weeping openly now, quietly sobbing into a handkerchief. George looked physically ill, his face ashen. Avoiding everyone's eyes, Karen stared at Dennis with utter contempt, shaking her head slowly in disbelief and disgust. Get out, I said finally, my voice flat, devoid of the earlier fire, just, empty, exhausted. Both of you get out of my house now. Dennis stumbled to his feet, looking utterly destroyed, vacant, a broken man. Chloe, surprisingly, or perhaps not so surprisingly, tried one last desperate, venomous attack, fury, replacing the shattered remnants of her composure. You old witch, she spat, her face contorted with rage and humiliation, pointing a shaking finger at me. You set us up, this whole thing, it was a set-up. You set yourselves up, I replied calmly, meeting her hateful gaze without flinching. With your greed, your arrogance, your contemptible cruelty, you thought I was weak, disposable, an easy mark. You were wrong. George stood up then, slowly, heavily, his face grim, set like stone. He looked directly at his son, then at Chloe. Dennis, Chloe, leave now. His voice held a tone I'd never heard from him before, absolute finality, cold fury, the sound of a door slamming shut on their lives. They scrambled out, stumbling over themselves in their haste, avoiding eye contact with everyone, the weight of the family's judgment, the social ruin palpable in the air they left behind. They didn't just leave my house, they left the family, in that moment, cast out, utterly, deservedly. The room remained silent for a long moment after the front door slammed shut behind them, the shockwaves still reverberating, the ugly truth hanging heavy in the air. Then, slowly, hesitantly, apologies began, expressions of horror, disbelief, offers of support, help, anything I needed. Karen came over, knelt by my chair, took my hand, her eyes full of tears. Agnes, I am so sorry, I had no idea. I accepted their apologies, their support graciously, but inside I felt strangely calm, vindicated, yes, definitely vindicated, but also weary, deeply weary. The fight was won decisively, spectacularly. but the scars remained etched onto my heart, my home. The aftermath: Dennis and Chloe faced complete and utter social ostracization. Their carefully constructed world, built on appearances and borrowed status, crumbled overnight. News travels fast in families, in small communities. Their names became whispers, cautionary tales. Their attempts to justify or explain were met with stony silence or outright contempt. Legally, I considered pressing charges. The police were certainly interested when my solicitor discreetly made inquiries. But the thought of a prolonged court case, the public scrutiny, the rehashing of the painful details, I decided against it on my terms. Instead, I made them an offer through my solicitor, a non-negotiable demand: repay every single penny they stole from the household account, provide funds for the professional assessment, restoration or like-for-like replacement sourced by me for any original pieces they damaged or that were deemed lesser quality fakes, and sign legally binding agreements drafted by my solicitor, never to contact me or come near my property again for life. The alternative: I would release all the evidence. Photos, bank statements, receipts, the online listing of the fake desk, audio snippets from the cameras, signed witness statements from everyone present at the intervention, to the police, and perhaps selectively to the local press. They chose repayment, swiftly, desperately, humiliating, financially crippling, but infinitely better than public disgrace and prison. I heard through the family grapevine that they had to sell their car. Chloe sold jewelry. They borrowed heavily from anyone foolish enough to lend to them. It took months, painful months for them, I imagine, but they paid, every last penny accounted for by my solicitor. I used some of the money to have the real furniture brought back from storage, carefully inspected by experts. Restored where needed, my home slowly began to feel like mine again, though it would never be quite the same. The ghosts of their betrayal lingered in the corners. The gleam on the furniture sometimes seemed tainted, but it was mine, authentically mine. I installed a state-of-the-art security system. Cameras, alarms, changed all the locks, reviewed all my financial arrangements, my will, my medical directives, with my solicitor, ensuring my autonomy was ironclad, protected by layers of legal fortifications, leaving no loopholes, no ambiguities. Do I regret the way I handled it, the calculated exposure, the theatrical confrontation, the social destruction I unleashed? No, not for a second, not even in the quiet hours of the night. They didn't just want my money or my possessions, they wanted to erase me, to label me incompetent, to silence my voice, to take control of my life, my narrative. That level of intimate malice, that profound betrayal, required more than just a quiet legal resolution. It required a reckoning, a clear, undeniable statement that I would not be erased. They underestimated me profoundly. They saw an old woman softening around the edges. They didn't see the archivist, the historian, the keeper of records, the woman who understood that evidence, meticulously gathered, carefully catalogued, and strategically deployed, is the ultimate power, the ultimate truth-teller. They didn't count on the fury simmering beneath the surface, the righteous rage of someone pushed too far, someone fighting not just for possessions, but for their identity, their legacy, their right to exist on their own terms with dignity. My life is quieter now, warier, perhaps definitely warier. Trust doesn't come easily anymore, but it is peaceful. My home is filled once again with the things I love, the real things, each piece a testament not just to Arthur and our life together, but to my own resilience, my own strength, my refusal to be silenced. Trust is such a fragile thing, like delicate porcelain, once broken so completely, shattered into so many pieces by those you held closest. It never fully mends, the cracks remain visible, palpable. Self-respect, agency, the control over my own life, those I reclaimed fiercely, decisively, and that is a victory worth savouring every single day. Wow, just wow, Agnes's story, right? Victoria again, taking a breath after that. The level of calculated cruelty, the sheer audacity, swapping out pieces of her life, her memories, replacing her reality with cheap fakes, all while pretending to care. It's staggering, truly chilling. And her response, meticulous, strategic, utterly devastating, using her unique skills, her quiet strength, her archivist's mind, turning their own assumptions, their own underestimation of her, against them with surgical precision. That final twist, the fake Deska, the replica she commissioned as a trap, it's genius. Cold, maybe, calculated, certainly, but genius, a masterstroke of psychological warfare against those who tried to break her psychologically. It raises questions, doesn't it? Big questions. When does justice tip over into revenge? Was Agnes's response proportionate? Was it necessary to go that far, the public humiliation, the social destruction? I think maybe, when someone tries to systematically strip away your entire identity, your autonomy, your connection to your own life and history, maybe the response needs to be equally absolute. Maybe the scales required that level of rebalancing. What do you think? Was her intervention brilliant justice served cold or calculated vengeance? Or perhaps are they sometimes the same thing when the wound is that deep? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I truly want to hear them. This story deserves discussion. Stories like Agnes's, they need to be shared as warnings about the darkness that can exist, even in families, as inspiration for anyone feeling powerless or underestimated. As proof that strength doesn't diminish with age sometimes, it sharpens, it clarifies, it becomes a formidable weapon. If this story moved you, shocked you, resonated with you in any way, please subscribe to the channel. Share it with others, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. You never know who might need to hear that fighting back, even ruthlessly, perhaps, is possible, and sometimes absolutely necessary. Thank you for listening, really listening to Agnes's powerful story. I'm Victoria, and I'll be back soon with another story you won't forget. Take care, be aware, and never underestimate the quiet ones.